Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton's Communications and Marketing Department. And today we're going to focus on a potentially romantic and bloody part of Hampton's history, the Pirates. My guest today is Mark St. John Erickson. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Robin. I'm glad to be here.
You have worked for the Daily Press for quite a while now and focused on arts and history. What brought about your reporting series that then turned into a book on pirates?
One of the things that's interesting about pirates in Hampton Roads and in Hampton in particular is that people know about the story of Blackbeard, and that's
Recently, though, I don't know that that's always been even as well
told. Well, there's a house over near Wythe that is called, it's called Blackbeard's house, and it's not really Blackbeard's house, but it's belonged to the people who went out to get Blackbeard. But beyond that, people don't know a lot, and what I discovered in the course of my reporting is that Hampton and Williamsburg together, or Hampton Roads, are probably one of the anchors of the golden age of piracy in the New World. It's at the end of the Gulf Current. All the trade winds come here, and when you look at old maps of the New World, you'll see Virginia at the top, and then you'll see Florida in the middle, the Caribbean, and then all of the gold ports in Spain, or in New Spain at the bottom. So Hampton was definitely part of that world, and because of that, it became a home to pirates, it became a home to pirate hunters, it became a target of pirates. We don't think about it today because we don't have palm trees and sand, or we have plenty of sand but no palm trees. But pirates were not maybe a daily fact of life, but a real fact of life for at least 150 years in Hampton's history.
That is just amazing. So tell us a story. Pick any pirate you want. You can start with Blackbeard, or you can start with someone lesser known.
Well, Blackbeard is the one that we know about, and Blackbeard may not have set foot in Hampton, but it's likely that he did, alive. But he did recruit people from Hampton, and they served on his ships. And our governor, Spotswood from Williamsburg, sent a flotilla of boats out from Hampton. They went down to North Carolina, and they battled Blackbeard at Ocracoke. Our part of the story really is that they brought his head back, they brought his crew back, they marched him in onto the shore, they marched him up to Williamsburg, and there they were tried. Whether or not they were actually hung or not is still a mystery, and this book tries to address part of that.
So interesting. So tell us, was Blackbeard this sort of giant feared? I mean, I've heard other versions of his biography in which he's more of a CEO.
You know, Blackbeard did cultivate his image. He wore fuses, smoking fuses in his beard. He was a large man. He was a tough man. He died fighting. But he was only one of many. In a little bit later than that, Governor Spotswood captured 8 or 9 pirates in Hampton. They were spending money too freely. He hung them, and they turned out to be members of Black Bart Bartholomew's crew. Well, Black Bart was mad, and he sent a message all the way from Africa and said, "I'm going to come back and get you." And for months and months, the entire colony was up in arms worrying about Black Bart. So Blackbeard may have been fierce, but Black Bart was even fiercer.
So tell us a little bit more about Black Bart. How does this
Black Bart was a Welshman. He may never have been in Hampton either. But what makes him interesting is that just the very threat that he would come threw the entire country into an uproar. In those days, a pirate could, and they often did, sail right through the mouth of the bay, all the way up into Old Point, into the James. The Dutch pirates did it. The French pirates did it, English pirates did it, the Spanish did it. Our area was very, very vulnerable to pirates, and that's why we ended up being a target, but also being one of the colonies that was the most ferocious pirate hunters.
Was there an upside of pirates? I mean, they certainly had money to spend when they came into port. I mean, was it a sort of part of the commerce, or?
Yeah, and you know, there are pirates who lived on Queen Street. One pirate whose fame has recently been discovered may have been the inspiration for the book Treasure Island. He lived on Queen Street. He happened to be sailing out of here down to the West Indies when his ship was stranded in a hurricane. on the Outer Banks. And what did he do while he was there? He managed to take over a Spanish treasure ship that was also stranded and sailed away. It was one of the biggest heists in pirate history from a guy who lived on Queen Street. Another famous, or not so famous, but I think he should be famous, Hampton pirate is a man named William Dampier. He was here in Hampton probably selling some pirate loot when some of his friends came and got him in the 1690s. They ended up going around the Horn to the other side of South America, and then they came back. But William Dampier ended up writing two histories of his life, and they inspired the book Robinson Crusoe, but also inspired Charles Darwin, the great naturalist, to go to the Galapagos Islands. So there's a Hampton pirate who had an international impact on literature and on science.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Is that why we as a culture, I mean, just one example of why we are so fascinated by pirates?
Pirates were, in a lot of ways, were regular people. William Dampier was picked up by a group of people who had no pirate experience whatsoever, and they wanted somebody who was seasoned. And I think what appeals to us is that we think we might be pirates, or we could be pirates. The other thing that's nice about pirates, for a lot of people, or it's attractive, is that they were a very democratic bunch. They would elect their captains. Black Bart was a prisoner, and everyone loved him so much that they elected him captain.
Really?
So pirates have a lot going for them. They're adventurous, they're democratic, they're a lot of second sons and people without money who end up being very enterprising and sometimes very violent. But it was a violent time.
Well, that is what I think people forget to some extent too, is how violent it was, how risky it was. I mean, we have a whole lot of downtown Hampton looks a whole lot different than it did then. And people who are not necessarily born with money have more opportunities than they did in that time. Many
people turned to piracy because they had been in the employ of the English pirates. Many of them had been in the Royal Navy, or had been privateers working for the Royal Navy. And after a number of wars, they downsized, and these people had nothing to do. That's probably what happened with Blackbeard and not necessarily Black Bart, but the man who came from Hampton. He was certainly in the Royal Navy, and he ended up here because there was no more work for him anymore.
So privateers, explain to people what privateers are.
Well, privateer, the best example here would be the Dutch that came here during the 17th century 2 times. They were not Dutch Navy sailors. They were commissioned by the Dutch West Indies Company. They flew a Dutch flag, but it had a Dutch West Indies insignia, and they were basically given a license to be pirates. So they came here twice, and they raided the tobacco fleet. And when I say raided, that means they took 40 to 50 ships and left. And that was a lot of money in those days, thousands and thousands of pounds of money. So, but essentially they were good sailors, good fighters, but they were not military.
They were sort of on consignment. You kept a portion of what you raided, perhaps?
They were contract pirates is what they were.
Right. And so then they just freelanced and went out on their own when they were no longer.
Then that's when they became pirates. They made the switch from being a privateer who had a license from somebody, not always a good one, and not every country recognized other countries' licenses. But they would become pirates after that.
So how does the real life of a pirate and what you've studied through history kind of contrast with our image today, or maybe the Disney-fied?
As Disney-esque as Johnny Depp is in Pirates of the Caribbean, he modeled his character after both Blackbeard and Black Bart. Black Bart was known to wear a long red crimson velvet coat. He had a giant jewel around his neck. It was designed and made for the King of Portugal. But this guy went into the Portuguese gold fleet, singled out the ship, attacked the ship, took its treasure, took it, and he wore it. And so they cultivated their images, And the Disney stereotypes are really, in some cases, not that far from the real thing.
So they had to be a little bit of a showman,
flamboyant,
of a leader, yeah, to maintain that image, to keep people, to maintain that feared image, I guess.
It helped him in leadership roles. It certainly helped Black Bart because he was also known as the Crimson Pirate, and you could see him from the opposing ships, and he did that to strike fear in the hearts of his opponents. But on the other hand, his opponents were not always well armed. You didn't have to be all that good to be a pirate. You were not necessarily a great military leader or strategist. You just had a few more guns than the other guy did.
And a lot more nerve, maybe.
Possibly, yes.
And so Hampton's role then was in this commerce and trade and people coming here, but then what made Governor Spotswood decide to fight the pirates? You said a lot of places just sort of put up with it.
A lot of places did put up with it. North Carolina is a famous example. Blackbeard was probably from North Carolina. He probably was in cahoots with the governor there.
They got maybe some sort of benefit.
A kickback.
Right.
But and that happened also with the Treasure Island pirates. The North Carolina, they tried to capture him so they could get a share of the loot that he had stolen, not so that they could return it to the rightful owners, who were the Spanish. But it's Spotswood hung a lot of pirates, and he was so afraid to go back to England that he demanded a 42-gun battleship so that he would be safe going back.
Because he knew the passage.
Well, Black Bart said he was going to come and get his head, and the thing is, you hear people make those promises. Well, Black Bart actually did that in a couple of cases in the Caribbean. He said, "I'm going to get your head," and he went in and he got a governor of an island, hung them up, took their head off.
Wow. Okay, so speaking of heads, the Blackbeard's head, is that true?
Probably.
So it was brought back to Hampton, what, on the bow of the ship, or?
I'm not sure if it was on the bow. It was a netting of some sort, likely. It was probably displayed. It was a pretty common thing. When we talk about a violent time and a violent era, criminals were often dismembered in some way or their hands taken off. In this case, they had his head. They put it on a pike, and they put it probably at Blackbeard's Point. There's not documentation.
Which is where? Tell people where.
Blackbeard's Point is down Ivy Home Road off of Kicquetan on the Hampton River.
Right by the
And it would have faced just a little bit down from the boat ramp. It would have been across from Hampton University. And people would have seen that as they came in. And it was put there because the governor knew that a lot of people in Hampton, law-abiding people, were probably taking opportunities to do a little piracy of their own. So this was a warning to other people.
To everybody. Wow. And
they, the other cases, not in Hampton, but they hung people in chains at Gloucester and in Tappahannock, just to let their bodies be a message to somebody else.
And you said also there may have been some pirate bones recovered in an archaeological dig in Hampton.
There was a dig at what's the Crown Plaza now. It's known among archaeologists as the Radisson dig, and they found a skeletal remains that were buried on the tidal line, and that is a ritual way, a fairly customary, well-known way to bury pirates. You bury them face down in between the tides. And it's a way of damning them. So if you're a pirate, you're evil, you need to go to hell. And if you bury them that way, you're trying to help ensure that. It's in the vaults at the Hampton History Museum, not on display, but may be on display in the future because they're rethinking their exhibits about pirates.
Interesting stories. And Mark, you want to tell us about your book? Because you've collected some of this reporting.
Here's a little book. It's called Out of the Sea Came Pirates, The Golden Age of Piracy in Hampton Roads. What it is a collection of the articles I wrote a year ago for a series on pirates in Hampton Roads. And it tells you why Virginia was important because of the trade winds and the trade currents and how that led to piracy. Virginia was founded by pirates. Christopher Newport was the single biggest prize winner of all the English pirates who attacked the Spanish and the Portuguese. And so when he came here, the Spanish said, that's a nest of pirates, and he was right. It goes from that to the Spanish pirates of the 1750s. They were here right off Old Point, stealing boats left and right. It does the Dutch, it does Black Bart, Blackbeard, and a few others as well. So there's plenty of stuff in there. And what's nice about it is it's a good, quick read, but it's all very local stuff. Everything in here happened within 20 miles of Hampton.
Oh yeah, you read through that and the place names are all familiar and it looks different than it did, but it's right in our backyard.
It's a backyard story. That's why I wanted to write it, and I think it's one that's been overlooked, and it's one that people will enjoy once they understand just how deeply Hampton was involved in piracy and fighting piracy.
That's wonderful. Okay, and the book is available at the Hampton History Museum.
Hampton History Museum.
Probably some other places too.
Yes, other places too.
We'd love for you to pick it up at the History Museum. And you do periodic signings, and so when you have something coming up, we'll put up a slide about that.
Okay, that would be great.
Where it'll be. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming by today, Mark. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've learned some true stories about pirates to add to the lore that you've already known. Thank you.